So let's focus on the telephony service. If there's no restrictions, if you have not been told, you can't show learned ePhone DNs in the running config. If there's no restrictions, and we've talked about this already, don't use any one of those. So having said there's 4 options, use the mysterious 5th option instead, and that's just build it manually. Don't use what's known as SNAP, Simple Network Order Provisioning. Don't use it. Just build it manually. Gives you the maximum flexibility, maximum control. Okay? And this is just like creating a dedicated CME. You're going to put your telephony service, you build your ePhones, your ePhone DNs, and you can customize that to your heart's content. You can support any number of features that are allowed in CME. You can have a hunt group, you can have BACD, you do what you want. Best way, most flexible. And yes, it's a bit of manual configuration, but it's only 2 phones and 2 or 3 or 4 ePhone DNs. It's not as if you've got 50 phones here. You've only got a finite number. You've only got 2 phones, right? So that's the best way. If they've said to you, no ePhones in the running config, okay, if that's the case, then, well, we can't build it manually now, can we? So go with the SRST mode auto provision DN. Okay, we'll show the DNs, and you can customize the DNs. You can put calling name, you could have call lists, you could have BACD. So you still have BACD here and hunt groups. That's great. Okay, but you can't customize the ePhone, the actual phone itself, which will rule out features such as barge, C-barge, intercom, because that requires customizing the phone. What else is on the ePhone? If you wanted to have some kind of watch, monitor lines, any BLF speed dials, things like that, you'll lose them because you cannot customize the phone. Okay, but at least you've got some feature support. Hunt groups, BACDs, conferencing can be done and stuff like that. Why would they restrict you? Why? What's the logic? What's the reasoning behind giving you this restriction? Maybe there's some bugs that they don't want you to run into by having the phones in the running configuration. Maybe it's there to protect you from yourself. Okay, and obviously if they said no ePhones or no ePhone DNs, then you'll have to use none. Okay, and that will end up being very, very similar to the Call Manager fallback, in the sense that you won't have much in your running configuration, right? So let's just put in no ePhones and no DNs in the startup running configuration. Okay, in this sense, we're going to be using auto none. Now, what the advantage, so no BACD. BACD cannot be done. No hunt groups. Virtually no features, but you can have a hardware conference. All right, so that's the one thing, I think that's the one advantage this has above Call Manager fallback. If you had a need for some hardware conference bridge. But besides that, it's very, very similar to Call Manager fallback. There's no customization on the phones, on the ePhone DNs, in the same way as Call Manager fallback. Okay, so in the event that they don't really give you any restrictions, which is, I would guess, why would they give you restrictions? Okay, besides having some kind of bugs, but I think we're going to go down this path if we can build it manually, right? And you can customize it. So your configuration is very, very similar to as if it's this R3, as if it's a dedicated telephony service. Very, very similar. Okay, so I'm going to actually go through on my iOS gateway and do this. All right, so let me go to my router number R2. Okay, I've got quite a lot of configuration there. No telephony, so I'm going to get rid of it all gone. And I just want to make sure that my phones here are registered to the call manager. Just check my CCIE phones are actually registered in the UCM. They are currently not, but I've got a couple of 7960s here. This is one of them. So I've got one phone, and let me just go in there and put that in CCIE. So the first thing then with SRST, we must have the SRST reference configured, which is something we did from the very beginning of the lab. Use default gateway. Okay, so that's my third choice CM. Okay, so let's go to the iOS. And I'm hoping that this is going to be an MGCP gateway. New. So we go to our telephony service. I'm going to go down the path of doing what I said you shouldn't do. I'm going to use SRST mode auto provisioning. Okay, SRST mode auto provision, and let me just use all. Okay, but I think this is something that I wouldn't do in the lab environment. I would have already built my ePhones and ePhone DNs, but let's just go down that path right now. And then we've got SRST DN line mode. We probably want to use Octo. Watch out for that because the default is single. That means you couldn't conference, you couldn't hold new call, you couldn't consult transfer, and so on and so forth. So make sure you're always using Octo lines or dual lines unless they've specified something else. You've then got, typically in SRST, we want to make it look transparent. If there's an outage and we can no longer reach call manager, the user shouldn't know about it. We should be transparently going into survivable remote site telephony. All right, so we will give a message which is identical to what the UCM would give the phone. Time, question mark, date, question mark. Make it match what you have inside the UCM. Okay, so I won't bother with that. That's self-explanatory. You've got IP source, 3 normal commands, IP source. Oops, no need for the mask. Max DN. If I think I need 4, double it. If you've got 2 phones, double that, so 4 DNs. Okay, so best guess, maybe I'll increase that to 8. I don't want to put 48 in there because it will show in the running configuration. Max ePhones, I'll put 2, I've got 2 phones. What else do we have in our base? Often I would include music and hold server. I would put the MOH and look for a music and hold audio file on the flash and play that, but I want to refrain from doing that right now because I want to see what happens when we have BACD and no music and hold. So I'm going to not go ahead and put the music and hold command, but that's something I would put in normally. Voicemail would be my pilot number, and here it's Unity Express, the pilot number for Unity Express. Okay, and I think that's about it. Do show run, telephony service, and have a look at that. All right, that looks okay, except for the date and the time commands. That looks okay. Now the phone in question, I'm going to add a null route. So I'll simulate an outage by just putting a null route to the sub. We can't contact the sub anymore, and we can't contact the pub anymore. So you can see that a phone's come in and registered. I've only got one phone. I'm going to have to have a look at my other phone at some point. I have to just go next door and probably remove an ITL file from the phone in question. So anyway, we'll continue as we are. We've got one phone registered, and because I used SRST mode provision all, right, we can see the DN in there and the ePhone in there. And to your point, the external, now I don't have an external number mask in the Call Manager database, but you can see here the name is not correct. The name's not in the configuration file. What happened here? The phone has the phone's lost its keep alive to the sub. It's lost its keep alive to the pub. There's an outage. There's a WAN outage. We don't know what happened. Some event has occurred. We are now going to register to the R3, to the router. The router's going to say, okay, well, the router's going to say, give me your TFTP file. Give me your configuration file. In fact, before that happens, question number one, we try and make contact here. The first question is the MAC address already in the running configuration? So is Site C Phone 1 MAC address already in the configuration? If it's already there, because maybe you manually added it, maybe this is like the third time we go into SRST and the ePhone's already there, or the second time, okay, we won't have to add it again. It's already there. So the first question is, do we need to add this phone into our configuration? If it's already there, let's not bother. It's already there. Carry on. Just carry on with the registration process. So the answer is Site C MAC. Let me just clarify that. If Site C MAC exists, if the answer is yes, we're done. Just go with a skinny registration that will take place. So I'm going to put no snap, no simple network auto provisioning. If, however, the answer is no, the MAC address does not exist in the running configuration, then it will invoke snap and it will ask for the configuration file. It'll ask, okay, phone, give me your configuration file, and I'm going to build the ePhone DNs and ePhones much in the same way as has happened here. We've built the. How do we get the number? How do we get the? How do we get this number here? External number mask. How do we get? Well, there's nothing else in there, as it happens. But how do we get that information? It's from the configuration file that the phone supplied. Okay, so that would only happen one time. Now that the phone's in the running configuration, the next time this phone goes into SRST, we won't need to add it again, okay, because it's already added. It's already in the running configuration. Talking about Snap and how the iOS gateway would build the configuration. But the second time it went into SRST, it wouldn't build it because that exists now, second time, and it wouldn't build it again.